In the last video, we got all the driveline components fabricated and installed. And now we are on to the engine. My name's Callie, I'm the okayest engineer. Let's get into it. All right, engine mounts. This is something to chat about. I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do to actually get these on here. I was thinking about deviating from the instructions, but I came to this and will kind of explain my way through that. When you get these engine mounts, they are welded. They do warp slightly, and there's no way to know exactly if they're going to fit to each specific fiberglass part because every fiberglass part is different. So they didn't exactly match up. The instructions say go ahead and throw on a layer of JB Weld and you can bond them to the helicopter. I didn't want to do that because if God forbid something goes wrong, I want to be able to take these things off and replace them or change them or whatever in the future. So bonding them on wasn't really an option because you would then basically sacrifice the fuselage if something happened. So what I did is I hand massaged these suckers into, I guess, perfect fitment. And it didn't take much. Beat it with a hammer a couple times, force it into submission, and I got them actually fitting really, really well with not too much massaging. It is also probably important to note that there is a fillet weld on the inside of this motor mount, and if that fillet weld is too big or if the corner on the fuselage is too sharp, it will not sit down into its location. So I went ahead and sanded down a larger radius into these corners here, just where the mounts are mounted, and that seemed to do the trick. Now, as far as bolts and fasteners are concerned, you actually cannot use bolts on these locations because there's not enough room between this bracket and the engine, and you would interfere there. So basically you are stuck with rivets. I guess you could do like a blind net or something from the inside, but in all intents and purposes, these rivets are totally fine. These are also located, good job, Composite FX. These are located so that the bulkheads on the inside of this, I don't know, control tower shaft thing, the bulkheads are lined up so that they actually act as doublers and stiffeners for the motor mount locations. So you drill your holes through those bulkheads, and then you actually use a washer on the backside of the rivets to secure and hold everything in place. I did use my spherical magnets to make sure that the location of everything was good and that I wouldn't miss the holes that I was drilling through the fuselage. And so turns out they are. Composite FX must do a really good job, as seen in other locations, of holding tolerances, and so if you follow their instructions, you should hit those doublers just fine. Basically, I said all that because I'm now back to just doing it as the instruction called for it. I think it's gonna be just fine, minus bonding these to the actual fuselage, which I also know will be okay. All right, the motor mounts are installed and they are very solid. The only thing I will say is do everything you can to install these before you install your control tubes, because with those control tubes installed, it is impossible to get back there and even harder to see. So Definitely, if you're building this and you're following in my footsteps, put your motor mounts on before you get those controls installed. The fuselage is ready for the engine, so let's get the engine ready for the fuselage. Getting this engine built to where it is now was pretty straightforward. It was a lot of just assembling work and bolting things together. I didn't record any audio with what I was doing because, once again, it was pretty just straightforward. So I put together a build montage that you can enjoy now, and while that's playing, I'll get into what this engine is, how we get it from Composite FX, and some of the modifications that they've done to it before it arrives. This helicopter uses an 800cc two-cylinder, two-stroke engine. In the Composite FX world, it's referred to as the CFX 800, and you'll also hear people call it the Inntec 800. It's liquid-cooled, fuel-injected, oil-injected, and makes roughly 95 horsepower in this application. Now, the cool part is that this engine isn't some totally unknown, one-off aviation experiment. It comes from the same general family of the high-performance 800 class two-strokes that built a pretty strong reputation in the snowmobile world. These engines were designed to live in a really abusive environment, high RPM, cold starts, vibration, constant throttle changes, and a lot of wide-open throttle operation. And in the two-stroke community, especially with the Suzuki Arctic Cat 800 engines, the praise you hear over and over is reliability. Supertrax even described the Arctic Cat Suzuki 800 Twin as having quote-unquote bulletproof reliability, which is about as strong of a compliment as a two-stroke snowmobile engine can get. For the helicopter, the important thing is that the engine is not being used the same way it would be in a snowmobile. In a sled, the 800cc two-stroke might be tuned to make a lot more peak horsepower, but in the XE290, the engine is derated to around 95 horsepower, turning about 6,000 RPM, which means it's operating well below what the basic engine architecture is capable of. Aero News described that as running at only about half its potential, which helps extend component life and overall dependability. That's the big reason this engine makes sense here. Helicopters are extremely demanding on engines because they don't get much of a break. Once you're flying, the engine is basically working the entire time. So for this application, you don't necessarily want the highest strung version of the engine. You want a version that's making good power, but doing it comfortably and consistently. So on paper, this engine is kind of the sweet spot for this helicopter. It gives a big step up in power compared to the smaller MZ202 powered XE and XEL models. And with the XET, the turbine is awesome, but it burns significantly more fuel. Composite FX lists the XET at about 10.5 gallons per hour compared to about 6 gallons per hour for the XE290. Oh, you know what? I probably shouldn't have done that. Well, I done effed up. If you noticed, when I was pressing this bearing in, I wasn't pressing on the inner race. And that's because in my mind, there wasn't a step in this bearing mount, and I thought I was pressing on it just by pressing on the face, which I wasn't. So I pressed all that load through the balls, and then when I took it off, it was super notchy. I took it out just to see and play around with it. Basically, nothing worked, and I have to replace this bearing now, which might be challenging. The outer race won't be too bad. I can actually get a socket in there and press that one out. That should be pretty simple. But the inner race, that's going to be a nightmare. Right now I'm thinking that I'm going to have to just cut it and then hit it with a chisel and hopefully break it off, because I don't have a bearing puller and it went on there really tight, and I don't think a bearing puller would work anyways. So that's where we're at. I got some work to do. Yeah, this could get interesting. It definitely cracked. There it comes. Yay! Well, that wasn't near as bad as I expected. Basically just cut 2 slots on either side of the inner race, and actually as I was getting close to the ID on the second slot, I actually heard it pop, and that's when it cracked. From there, it just basically came off real nice and easy. So the inner race is off the shaft. The outer race is out of the housing. I did reach out to CFX. I have one on order. Hopefully it'll be here soon, but I'm going to proceed anyways. Both the upper and lower mounts are the same, so we're going to go round 2, and then we'll leave the upper mount off for now until we get that next bearing in. Of course, this is still a two-stroke, and that means it deserves respect. Good fuel, good oil, proper cooling, EGT monitoring, and careful maintenance all matter. But the reason I'm excited about this engine is that it has a strong power-to-weight ratio, it has a history rooted in a proven 800 class two-stroke platform, and in the helicopter, it is being used in a pretty conservative way. Now, despite its little size and my obviously muscular stature and my inability to ever ask for help, we have to figure out how to get that mounted on that, and that is what I have come up with. So I'm basically going to use these two chairs, two pieces of wood, and set the engine on the flywheel on these two pieces of wood, and then I'll use the jack that the fuselage is sitting on to basically go up and down and maneuver around so I can get the engine installed, because there's no way I'm going to be able to lift that thing and put it in all by myself. The downside to this, though, is the way it needs to go in, there is a radiator fan belt that I've already installed that will lie right in the way of my 2x4, or 1x2, I guess is what it is. So I got to take this belt off real quick so I can use my little engine hoist contraption. So we got to get on that. And there it is. The engine is fully supported by the fuselage, but it wasn't until this exact moment that I realized that I need the tail boom installed with its splitter gearbox installed so that I can align the output shaft of this first reduction to that splitter gearbox. So I got to get the tail boom back installed, and the way you align that is they give you some extra fender washers, some aluminum fender washers that are about an 1/8 inch thick, and you basically just space off the engine to the correct location. So this is going to be an iterative process, hopefully not too iterative, but we're going to see how that goes. Well, one extra fender washer on that top engine bracket seemed to push that output shaft exactly where it needs to be. Now, while I had all this kind of hanging here, it dawned on me that I haven't actually checked to see if the cowling that's sitting over there will actually fit over everything that I have going on. And so I think I'm going to take a little bit of time to get all of like the ancillary equipment, the exhaust, header, Y on. We'll get the throttle bodies installed onto the engine and anything else that's going to stick out. Also, we'll get the radiator shroud on as well, and we'll test out the new fan, or I guess prop, that I've kind of picked out to put down there, and get it all dressed up with the big stuff, and then get the cowling placed on to see how much room we have for other activities. Now that this thing is together, let's talk about how it works in the helicopter. The power comes out of the crank of the engine and goes into basically a centrifugal clutch, or like a glorified go-kart clutch. That allows the engine to start up and freewheel before the rotors are spinning, and then you can slowly engage that clutch to get the whole rotor head spinning. From there, it goes to about a 2-to-1 reduction and comes to this assembly. This assembly has what's called a sprag clutch in it. It's basically like a one-way bearing. It allows power to transfer through the shaft in one direction, but then allows the shaft to freewheel in that same direction in the event this got seized up. For example, if you lost the engine or something happened, the main rotor system would still continue to spin, and that is how you can auto-rotate if you have a catastrophic failure for the engine. So very important, and you actually check that on every single pre-flight when you start the helicopter. This engine is oil injected and fuel injected. You can see the oil injection here. I don't have the linkage connected, but basically this gets attached to the throttle cable, and that increases or decreases the amount of oil that it gets pumped into the fuel and then into the engine depending on the power setting. The fuel injection, you can see here, there's a fuel rail and then 2 fuel injectors. Those go right into the throttle bodies, and it is basically port injected, and you can monitor and change that with the ECU. You'll also notice that there are 2 spark plugs per cylinder. It's kind of nice that this was done factory from Arctic Cat, but that allows for redundancy in the helicopter. We will have 4 spark plugs, 4 coils, and each one will be individually controlled by the ECU, so we'll have redundancy, and we will check that all of those are working independently during the pre-flight every time we start the helicopter. This engine is water cooled. I have the radiator down here. It's not open yet. It's being protected, but the radiator will eventually go into this shroud. That radiator is cooled by a belt driven fan that's here. The factory gives you, it's kind of like a centrifugal fan. It's meant to blow air kind of horizontally. I didn't really like that. I wanted to change to something that may produce even more flow and is a little more efficient. So I actually found a 11-inch drone motor or drone propeller, so that's what I'll be using. I'm going to test this before I use it, obviously, but we're going to see if that will be a little bit more efficient. Now, before you get this engine, Composite FX actually rewinds the alternator which sits behind the flywheel. That'll give you more current for all of your avionics. They also provide a different flywheel. It's a little bit bigger than the factory one, and then obviously they supply a starter to go with that. Let me know in the comments what you think about this little engine, or if you have any questions. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Well, I've been putting this off for a while now, mainly because I've been using the cowling as a fixture to mount all of these other brackets that are on the helicopter. But the time has come to actually split this thing in half, and that's going to do a couple things for me. One, it's going to be so much easier to install and take off of the helicopter. Two, I can install one half at a time, and I can actually see where I'm going to have some interference potentially. And I need to get this thing scanned with the engine under it so that I can get back into CAD and start designing some things like the exhaust that the factory one will not work. It's too wide. So that will have to get redesigned. It'll also help me with other things like the intake and reservoirs for the radiator and the two-stroke oil and everything else that needs to get packaged. So we're going to jump into this. We're going to set up some lines, figure out where we're going to put some holes for the quarter turns, start cutting it down to the Kevlar, and then start chiseling this thing apart. With the cowling installed, we can now see how much room, or lack thereof, we have for activities. There's two main things that I knew were going to be a huge issue when it comes to this cowling. The first is the exhaust. Two-strokes exhaust are inherently huge, and the factory actually designed it to go laterally with the helicopter, and so if I were to use theirs, it would literally stick out both sides of the cowling, which, I mean, if I have to do, I will, but I'm trying to avoid as much as possible. So I'm going to attempt to design my own and have it go forward and aft and hopefully somehow sit in this space. But it's going to be extremely difficult because of how the header, the Y, comes out of the engine. I'm going to have to make a new one of those, and there's just not very much space in here. And the second is the intake and the airbox and filter. You can see the throttle bodies up there. There's a little bit more room. There's actually enough room to get some nice designed elbows in there. And I think I'm going to put the airbox somewhere kind of in that cavity back there. But I also need to get it outside the cowling to get fresh air. So there will be some design work and some fabricating to get all that done as well. But before we can get into any of that, I need to get all of this 3D scanned and into CAD land so I can start designing and doing some simulations on those components. I'm curious to hear if you guys like those longer time lapses that you've seen in this video. Please let me know in the comments below. We'll get into that scanning and designing on the next video. As always, go build something cool, never stop learning, and we'll see you on the next one.